start the meeting here. We'll start with an opening prayer, and Alan Weldon has agreed to lead us in an opening prayer.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for all today's blessings, especially the right to be able to assemble freely. We ask that you should send us your inspiration, not only to ourselves as in our deliberations, but also to our leaders. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. All right. Who is our oldest veteran present? I think it might be. There he is. Would you lead us in a flag salute here, Al? Oh, you're not a veteran? Well, who's our? Oh, Alan is. Alan gets you get double duty, Alan. All right.
Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Born and unborn. Okay, well, we don't have a guitar player tonight, but I'm going to sing God Bless America, and I hope you join me. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. Okay, so office holders. Glenn is a county chairman, right? Of which county? Sumner County. We got the Sumner County chairman here, guys. And we got any precinct people here? Precinct committee man or woman? Oh, 1, 2. We have the chairman of the Sedgwick County Republican Party here. Thank you for coming, Mr. Glasgow. Glad you're here. Who else do we see? Debbie, secretary of the KRA, right here. So thank you all for being here. As far as the minutes, they're on video again, and you'll notice on the back side is a blank sheet. And that is because I did not have time to do the treasurer's report, which is actually Troy's responsibility, and he just says, oh, you do it, and if you get in trouble, let me know, or whatever, keep me out of trouble. So anyway, I just flat didn't have time. We started the Kansas Coalition for Life, which is my day job. We're at 2 abortion clinics, not 1. It's just been so incredibly busy. Even today, we had people that were flooded in and couldn't make it into their shift, and I had to come out and stand their shift for them. And it's terrible. You know, we're having flooding now in places that people have never, ever had flooded before. And if you listen to Al Gore, we're supposed to be at the point where the earth is parching, just parched earth and nothing, the global warming was supposed to be such that we are, so dry that we don't know where to go. Well, that's not happening. I drove up to North Dakota recently. Nebraska is floating away, just everywhere. They had a sign up there. It's getting late at night. I passed the sign that says Dry Creek. And I'm looking at the darn thing, and I said, that looks like the Mississippi River to me. It's a dry creek. I said, yeah.
Well, actually, the news hasn't been saying it, but it's an actual agriculture disaster. Worse
in
than
Nebraska.
We've ever been. The crops are being just
flooded
devastated.
out. Yeah, it's just incredible.
It's supposed to be the worst in history.
Yes.
There's the
wow,
media
look
ain't
at this.
talking about it.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Okay.
Where do I pay?
You don't have to pay anybody unless you want to eat. You can pay that at the front. Don't let them charge you more than $10.31.
Okay.
All right. This is Paul from, tell me your town again. Humboldt. Humboldt Paul from Humboldt, Kansas. A good fluoride fighter right here. Dr. Paul.
Yes.
You know Michael O'Donnell?
Yeah, we've met a long time.
Very good. Very good. All right. Paul cares about Wichita because he used to drive in during our fluoride fight and came in here and was a big part of that. So happy to have you at the meeting.
I started my acupuncture practice here.
Okay. Are you in Wichita now every day? No, okay.
No, I started it here.
Started it here, okay.
Back in 1989.
89, okay, very good. Well, we're honored to have you here. Get your food and come on back in and sit down. Okay, all right, okay. Oh, you can get your food later too. We'll be eating.
Are you about to start talking?
No,
No, we haven't, I
There's still
haven't
other
even
stuff.
introduced him yet. I'm just making excuses as to why I don't have a treasurer's report on here.
Put your name on the back
So,
of it if it ain't.
anyway, so we're busy. And I will double the treasurer's report next time, and you'll be all caught up. There was nothing big happened. Some money came in, and we spent some money, and you know how that goes. It's approximately the same as it was before. No big things to report on that. And at this point, I'm going to introduce Michael O'Donnell. Michael O'Donnell's a personal friend. I've known him since he was about, how big were you in 1979 or 80? Okay,
I
what
was
year were you
a few
born?
years from being conceived, so.
Okay, so what year were you born?
84.
84, okay, so I've known his dad.
Yes.
I've known his dad since about
80.
Yeah, 19.
When he came back.
80, what, 3, 84 in that era?
Came back in 81. So.
81, okay, so that's, and he was a strong pro-lifer then, and so I've known him and his family, wonderful parents, and I've known him very active in the Tea Party Republicans and with Craig Gable's group, and you know, he's always doing the right thing, and he's always helpful, he's always polite, and as I said in the press release, which you guys have gotten, he will just surprise you how well he can campaign, and this guy beats the odds like nobody I have ever seen, and he's never going to live that down with what he did with the FBI. I was so worried. I was praying to God, as maybe many of you were. I was so worried about this FBI situation because it just looked to me like if they weren't going to get him on one thing, they were going to get him on another, and he just cleaned the table. He beat everything. But if you remember, he ran, first of all, for city council. That's where, you know, he was the new person on the block, and he wasn't willing to go along with the bad things that were happening there. I was so proud of him. The city council would not give me the information I wanted on the bridge that was built that damaged my home, and he got me the paper, and you know, I won't go through the story I already put in the press release, and that may or may not have anything to do with why the FBI was after him. But the fact is, they were unfairly so, and he, you know, he survived it. But it's not the first thing he survived. His Senate race. Who in the world, in their right mind, behind his back when he would leave, Craig Gable and I, saying, "Oh, he's going to have a rude awakening. You know, Gene Schodorf's going to beat him about 2-1." And you know, here he wins. And then after he did that, Tim Norton, who runs strong as can be, O'Donnell's going to be ready to take him on. I'm saying, yeah, that's going to work. And he takes him on. The numbers are not in his favor. The voter registration is in Tim Norton's favor, and Michael walks away and wins that and didn't think anything of it. I said, what in the world? This guy's like, you know, what has he got going for him? I don't know. I think somebody upstairs is watching out for him. That's what I think. And I'm sure of it after the FBI thing. I'm sure of it. So anyway, very proud of Michael O'Donnell. There's very few people that once they get into public office that, I mean, I could list a long list of people that have gotten into office. Gene Schodorf is one. I helped her. You know, I helped her get in the Senate, and she was such a disappointment. And you know, and then ended up switching parties. And there, she went Democrat, didn't
Yes,
she?
she
Yeah.
did.
Before she left, she switched parties on me, and I gave her my sign locations and everything. You know, I'm just tired of the people that grow in office. When somebody says, "Well, you know, you grow in office," well, Michael's gotten better and better, more dependable. Very few people like him. I'm not going to say that if we would examine every vote, there might be some vote somewhere in the legislature that is, you know, that I would have gone the other way on. But Michael gets high ratings on all the conservative polls, and you know, you can brag about yourself when you stand up and talk. But I mean, he's got the right stuff, and I could not be more proud of him. And you know, I saw an email once from him, and it says "Future Prez," and I said, I hope that happens. And you know, they got to come from somewhere. And I think that right now he probably feels a little bit, having been through what he was through with the FBI, he might feel a little bit cautious, which that's good. Caution is good. But he's going places. I think he'll sure be a governor. And once he's a governor, we'll see what happens after that. So anyway,
nice.
Michael O'Donnell, great
Thanks.
thing.
Thank you. That's too nice. Yeah, that's too nice. And Mark has been a family friend for many decades now, as many of you in this room have, and worked alongside everybody. And he mentioned he and my dad have been friends, working the pro-life movement together. In fact, my parents were going to be here tonight, but very exciting news. My sister-in-law had their third baby today. So I'm an uncle. I'm an uncle now 3 times over. So as soon as we leave here, I'll be going over to Wesley Birth Care Center and getting to meet my new niece, London. And she has 2 big sisters named Lainey and Lucy. So Lainey, Lucy, and London. Those are the 3 names, and they are wonderful. And it makes you truly understand why so many of us have been involved in the pro-life movement. One of my favorite stories growing up is the Summer of Mercy, 1991. Raise your hand if you were involved in that. Yeah, so about half the room. That was probably one of my first memories of politics, because it was my 6th birthday party, and my dad and my grandpa left that morning to go protest, and my mom said, Mike, I'm going to have a house full of 6-year-old boys. We're going to Joyland. You've got to be back so we can leave at noon. And my mom couldn't get a hold of my dad, and it started raining, and so we stayed at the house, and she gets a phone call from my dad, and he had been arrested, and he was in jail, and he couldn't get a hold of, and my grandpa couldn't get a hold of my grandma because she was at our house, and of course there were no cell phones, right? And they're like, you need to bail us out. My mom said, I told you, do not get arrested today. This is the only day you cannot get arrested. I've she house full of 6-year-old boys. And so she likes to tell the story how she left my dad in jail that whole day, waited till after the party, went and picked him up. She and my grandpa, because they told everybody, don't bring your driver's licenses to the protest to get arrested. And then you just say John Doe, or you would do something along the pro-life movement, so you wouldn't do that. So he had no way to get out because he didn't have his driver's license or anything. So that's one of my first memories of my dad being involved in the movement, and a little bit of sacrifice as a child, hearing your mom and your grandma talking about your dad and grandpa being in jail. It was quite traumatizing as a child, but it instilled in me what truly is important, and that is human life. And we can argue about tax policy and roads and educational format, but at the end of the day, if we're not taking care of each other and life, we're not doing what God's work is. And God's work is to take care of each other and shine His light. So I'm a conservative first and foremost, because I believe that all life has value, and then everything else we can start negotiating from there. Like Mark said, I've been fortunate enough. We actually ran in the same election back in 2011. He and I both ran for Wichita City Council, and you came pretty close to Clinton in that year. I don't remember what it was, but the powers that be were after him and me, and they really
put me in jail.
Yeah, that is true. I forgot that. Yeah, they put Mark in jail for a parking ticket or something.
No, improper left turn.
So the headline on the day before the election was you were in jail, city council candidate. So it's just the corrupt system of the Wichita Eagle, and that's back when they had a little bit more influence. And I used to start a lot of my talks, and I would tell people the old quote, which is attributed to Mark Twain, may or may not be a Mark Twain quote, but it says, if you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read the newspaper, you're misinformed, right?
That is Mark Twain.
Yes, yeah. I know it's been attributed to him, and a lot of people have taken that and made slight variations to that. But I think we're all better off now, because the Eagle doesn't have quite the influence it used to have, spreading so much propaganda that liberals, as you've noticed, have taken a lot of offense that newspaper readership and even evening news has gone down, and Facebook and other social media has gone up, and they can't filter that. So that's why you see so much acrimony and divisiveness in Washington, D.C. about how to limit free speech on social media platforms, because conservatives actually have more influence on social media than liberals do. They share more, they're more engaged, they communicate better, and so I've been delighted to see that, because
they said Facebook was the only platform that actually showed that President Trump was going to win. If you read the newspapers or watched the evening news, you would think, oh, well, Hillary Clinton was going to be that, but Trump had so much more social media activity. So that's why I think you've seen so much of a fight about that. But Mark and I were able to do that, and then, like he said, ran against Gene Schodorf, and that election, I think, has a lot to do with what I went through with the FBI, actually, more than the Norton deal. If anybody remembers, Gene Schodorf's husband was Richard Schodorf. He was assistant U.S. attorney for the state of Kansas, and he ran the Wichita office. And both of the prosecutors that came after me, ironically, were both hired by Richard Schodorf. They both, liberals. We actually had the Facebook of screenshots of the Facebook of Mona First, who was the lead prosecutor. On that Facebook, she liked pages that said F, fill in the blank, Donald Trump, pages that said Kansans against Sam Brownback, Kansans against the Tea Party. These are groups that she's a part of that are pretty profanity in front of the president's name. I mean, it's just pretty wild. A lot of her posts were attacking conservatives, and gee, I got put in the crosshairs on a case that wasn't just bogus, but there was no case in the entire Department of Justice history of the Department of Justice. There was never a case similar to mine that actually went to trial, that actually was charged. And I believe that there are times that you have, unfortunately, politics that are so strong in the Department of Justice or the FBI that they seek out a person before they find a crime, and then they can manufacture a crime. And I believe in our court system, I truly do. And if it wasn't for what we've seen going on the last 2 years with President Trump, what we've seen going on the last 2 years with the Russian collusion case, I think people might think that I was crazy if I said that the FBI was political. But now you say it, and even Democrats think the FBI is political, because there's nobody, I truly believe there's nobody in America that has no love on either side more than James Comey. The Democrats blame him for Hillary losing because of his stupid press conference reopening the investigation, and the Republicans obviously blame him for all the problems that they've had since. And it's the proverbial onion. You pull back a layer, and it seems like every day more corruption is exposed within the ranks of the FBI. And it's very unfortunate, because it used to be the gold standard of our public safety and public information. The FBI was the best in America, and unfortunately its reputation's been tarnished. I've seen that on the local level, and in fact, one of my attorneys talked to one of the jurors in my case, and they said the first thing that came to their mind was that they can't trust the FBI. And I think that is sad, because there are so many good women, so many good men that work for the FBI, that work for the Department of Justice, that are there for the right reasons, not political, because they love our country. And it's unfortunate that there are certain people that have tarnished that. The judge in my case, Eric Melgren, has been a judge for, he was the last appointee of George W. Bush. So October of 2008, he was appointed to the bench. He had been U.S. Attorney for the state of Kansas during the Bush years. I think he was nominated, he told me, on September 10th, 2001, so the day before, because he was saying how he would never forget, he gets appointed to be a federal judge, and the next day, the terrorist attacks. And he said since that day, he's only had one other trial than mine end in an acquittal. Because like Mark said, you should be worried when you get indicted by the feds, because they do have a 97% conviction rate, which is astronomical. I was watching Tucker Carlson the other day, and he had George Papadopoulos on, and they were talking about his case and the corruption with that. But Tucker Carlson said the only other regime outside of the United States, 97% conviction rate, was Kim Jong-un in North Korea. They're the only one that has a higher rate of conviction. And that might be somewhat exaggeratory, but it kind of proves the point that if the FBI comes after you, you should be worried. I had many people keep telling me, take a plea deal, do this or that, and I just kept saying that if I didn't feel like I committed a crime, I think I'd be doing a disservice. I think so many people take plea deals because they can't afford attorneys, or just the pressure, the intimidation, the threat of jail time. Well, we can give you probation if you take a plea deal. We'll send you to jail. So they just scare people. But I would read Psalms 59 quite often, and it really comes down to, if God be for me, who can be against me? If you feel like you are being unjustly attacked or unjustly prosecuted, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family, you owe it to your friends, you owe it to your supporters to fight. And our criminal justice system in this country, this has made me a huge believer that we have got to fix it. I think the jury system is incredible. The fact that in a highly politicized era like 2019, the fact that I could get 12 women and men from complete different backgrounds from a 7-county radius, they pulled these jurors, that I got them to agree 12-0 on 21 of the charges and 11-1 on the 5 remaining charges, is a testament that the jury system can work, that people can be independent. But the problem is, what does it take to get there? And it's huge emotional costs, huge financial costs, and it's wrong in many cases. And I've been so delighted to see that President Trump is truly the first president in over 20 years to do any type of criminal justice reform. I know Bill Clinton did a little bit, but what Trump did last year with the First Step Act is truly the most, it's the biggest overhaul that they've ever had, because they continually add crimes to the books. They continually add severity of felonies and misdemeanors and different offenses. They're always adding. This was the biggest step forward to saying, hey, what should we really be focusing on? What are the crimes that matter? And there should be different lanes. And if it's a state issue, keep it in state court. If it's federal, keep it in federal court. The federal court can absolutely turn anything into a state, any state issue or local issue into a federal issue. I know in my case, they said it's because I used my Gmail account that it became wire fraud. Well, under those definitions, anybody that has a Gmail account could be committing wire fraud. That's scary. Anybody that has a bank account is. And I was the first person in the history of Kansas that they ever even got involved in a campaign finance issue. And the lady that ran Kansas governmental ethics, the campaign finance arm of the Kansas legislature, came to the trial to speak on my behalf. And not only did she say it was unprecedented, but everything the feds were charging me with were legal under Kansas law. And then you had the prosecutors then go and say, but it's not legal under federal law because he used his Gmail account, and it's all across the nation. And I also used a checking account, and that gets submitted through my bank and then routed through the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta, Georgia, and back to Kansas, and therefore it's crossing the entire country. So that is federal crime, even though a state says it's legal. So this is what concerns me, is that the feds can turn anything that we do, whether it's mail, phone, banking, email, into federal crimes, even if they make 0 cents. And my entire case was $10,400 is what they were going after. We know, and the Eagle's been working on putting something together, but they've been stonewalled a lot by the feds. But we know they spent over $400,000 on my case going after $10,000. We know that I spent about $120,000 trying to defend myself, which I'm highly in debt still, but I had to spend that money defending myself over $10,000. I mean, the stupidity of what we were dealing with is just hard to express. That they spend $400,000 going after $10,000. Meanwhile, at the same time, they're delaying court trials for a man who was involved in the murder of Andrew Finch, the swatting incident here in Wichita. They had to delay that. One day we were there and they had to break off the trial because they brought in over 30, I think there was about 36, over 30 illegal immigrants that were caught either with fake IDs or that had committed drug offenses or other type of personal felonies, assault, etc., they had to check them all in through the system. They had to come and be arraigned before the judge. But those are the types of issues that are having to get postponed because we're doing a trial over $10,000, and we have, just people in shackles that are illegal immigrants committing serious crimes. And they just the judge said we had to delay all that to continue back to my trial. So our country is we really need to get priorities in place. And I told them from the beginning, I'll work with the Kansas Governmental Ethics, I'll work with the DA, the Attorney General, to figure out if there was a crime committed, but they never asked any of those entities, and they never even asked me. The feds never interviewed me once about my case, about why I wrote some certain checks, and they were going to some of my friends and saying, do you remember what you did for this check in April of 2014? Well, no, nobody, very few people remember, oh, it's a $200 check from April of 2014, I don't know why Michael gave me that money. Well, why would they? I at least have memo fields in all my checks, but they never subpoenaed any of my information or interviewed me. And that's why I truly believe I was railroaded. I think the acquittals by the jury showed that, and I was fortunate enough to be at the Wichita Prayer Breakfast 2 weeks ago, and I saw Judge Melgren there and talked to him, and he told me, he said to me that as U.S. Attorney, he wouldn't have come within 10 feet of my case, and he said he didn't care if it was 10,000 or 100,000, that there's a right lane for certain crimes, certain venues for prosecution. This isn't a federal issue. We have really got to get back to some common sense in the criminal justice system, and we can't search people out and then look for a crime later. And the FBI agent, Pritchett was his name, was on the stand, and they said, well, why did you start this investigation? They said, well, we subpoenaed all of Michael O'Donnell's financial information from the banks to find any irregularities, which that's actually illegal, and it's there's a 1987 clause that says you can't do that. So what we've been struggling with, myself, my family, my attorneys, is if we actually want to countersue the government because they violated my personal rights, my constitutional rights. And as a Christian, there's times that you need to forgive and get over stuff, and I won, but a strong part of me says I want to fight back a little bit and just figure this out. So we've been struggling. We have 6 months to decide if I am going to do that, go back and fight a little bit more. So that's kind of the issue where I am today, because I truly believe it was a miscarriage of justice, that the whole thing was crazy, and they knew it from the beginning, but they saw this as a way to come after me because they thought that I had obviously committed a crime or I was a terrible person. And unfortunately, I had some bickering with a colleague on the county commission, and that colleague maybe called the FBI as well, and so I think it just escalated things. Like Mark said, the FBI was mad that I gave him information back in 2012. So there was a number of things that came to this point that they said, hey, we'll get him on something. We're going to throw 26 charges at him, which is astronomical. Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign chairman, who I believe maybe did commit some of those crimes, but they were using that as the wedge to get into the Trump campaign. He only had 18, and his was $60 million, and I had 26 on 10,000. Don't tell me that this was legitimate prosecution. 26 felonies on $10,000 has never happened in the history of the United States, in the history of the Department of Justice. They have never done so many indictments on such little money, ever, period. End of story. Paul Manafort, nationally, in the history of the Department of Justice. Paul Manafort, $60 million, 18 felony counts. And his were for a variety of reasons. Obstruction of justice, bank fraud, money laundering, but on $10,000, they've never had 26 felonies, because each one carries a penalty of up to 20 years. So you're figuring they're talking 520 years in prison over $10,000 if they gave you, obviously they wouldn't give you the maximum. But that's just so how outrageous this entire prosecution was, that they went so far overkill that I think it hurt their case, and I think I had answers for all the questions. And I believe at the end of the trial, the jurors all sat around and thought this was a colossal waste of their time because of the fact that these jurors are giving up an entire week of their lives. Many of them from out of town, because the federal district is much larger. It's 7 counties. So we had jurors from Ark City. We had jurors from Hutchinson, El Dorado. We had one from Inman, one from McPherson. I think about 7 were from Wichita and 7 were from outside of Wichita. That they were staying in a hotel. They gave up their lives for an entire week, over $10,000. I think it was almost offensive to them that this is what we're fighting about. And then you have the state lady come and saying it's legal and the Fed saying it's not. At what point does it stop? And I think the jurors were just frustrated. They were angry, and I don't blame them, because it's disrespectful at the end of the day to them to waste their lives. Because nobody truly wants to serve on a jury for a week of their lives and live in a hotel room and get their $30 voucher for food a day when they have other things going on in their lives. And many people see it as a ability to serve, civil service. It's important, be a juror, but generally people have other things they can do with their time. And so it just, to me, is sad that so many people were disrespected. But at the end of the day, we came through it, made me a stronger person, in times like that, I think you either become bitter or you become better's not the right term, but stronger through it. Having more faith in God, it brought me closer to God than I've been in a very long time, because it just wakes you up to the reality that you can't rely on yourself. And so, all in all, I would never want to go through that, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. There's nobody in this world that I dislike enough to want them to go through that. Even Governor Laura Kelly, I wouldn't wish her to go through that. But Laura and I have a long relationship. I was the chair of the health committee, and she was the ranking member, and she's just kind of a nasty person, and I stopped Medicaid expansion one year, and she was like, well, you consider yourself to be a Christian? And I said, I think there's a lot of ways that we can deliver health care to people that actually need it without Medicaid expansion, but she didn't really appreciate that. But it's better. She told Ty Masterson he was going to hell, which was more direct than anything she ever told me. But I think if any of you know Ty Masterson, he takes that honestly as a badge of honor. Like, oh, Lord Hell thinks I'm going to hell. Great. like I must be doing something right. So anyway, but I wouldn't wish what I went through even on Governor Kelly. There is nobody that I dislike enough that I would want them to go through that. The emotional cost, I find gray hairs now that I never had before. That's a true story. I find these gray hairs, I'm like, great. This was the stress I went through, and then I get my monthly bills from my attorneys that I'm on a monthly payment plan with. Yeah, just trying to get it paid down, and I just think every time, like, this is great. This is so great. But it makes me focus more on what I need to focus on, and that is the fact that there's a lot of people in this country that get convicted or take plea deals that are innocent. And those are some of the people we should be concerned about and advocating for. And any American should be concerned when the constitutional rights of anybody else gets taken away, because it can happen to anybody. And I mentioned at the trial that I'm somebody that I thought, well, I have enough friends, or I have enough common sense that I would never be in a position like that, but it sometimes chooses you. And it doesn't matter if you're personal friends with U.S. senators or governors or whoever, they can't get you out of a situation like that. So it can happen to anybody, and I'm like Mark said, it's something I'm going to live with forever, because it started when I was pretty young. So it's something I'm going to continue to preach, and I pray that God continues to give me that awareness that it's an opportunity to grow as a person and help other people, and I'll forever be talking to people and advocating for real criminal justice reform. And let's focus on what really matters, and it's human life. at every stage. We need to be taking care of each other and punishing people that commit real crimes, particularly personal felonies and rapes, assaults, murder. Focusing on that and protecting the lives of everyone and obviously children, which I know has been the life work of Mark Eatson, who will have a lot of crowns in heaven. And there's a lot of people, and this is what I tell people about the pro-life movement. We don't know the people that we walk past every day, that there are adults now that Mark's been doing it for over 30 years. There are adults that now have children that are alive today because we've advocated and we've shown that life has value. And we don't know this side of heaven, but I think when we all get to heaven, we're going to be able to see that, hey, we might have taken some arrows and spent a lot of money or personal times or gone through tragedies, but there are people alive because of something we did. And there's very few careers or causes that actually have that same effect. We all talk about doctors and saving lives and firemen and policemen, but those are tangible, and you know who those people are, and you see it, and you never really know on the pro-life movement. So anyway, I would love to answer any questions, or we can talk about county issues.
Okay, before we go to questions,
Sure.
I would like you to talk a little bit more about one word, and that is why, W-H-Y. You touched on it just barely. You mentioned my situation, the fact that you gave me information. It embarrassed the FBI because it showed that they were actually siding with complicit with the corrupt city council, and that they were letting federal, state, county, and city taxpayer money go to a contractor for concrete that he never purchased, and they're reimbursing him for concrete he never purchased, paying him for drilling holes that he never drilled, and we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars here. And yet the FBI determined that it was probably better that we could get rid of the truth truck than to clean up.
That's right. That's right.
That's bad. I mean, I know they don't like the truth truck.
They don't.
Like it.
I think there are, and I believe there are people within the FBI and some law enforcement as well that they're annoyed by things like the True Truck and people like who's the guy that killed Dr. Tiller?
Rotor.
Rotor. I was saying Raider, but that was obviously BTK.
No, Raider is the other one.
Right, different deal.
Same category.
But I think they get tired because you have people zealots, and I think we can all agree what Rotor did was wrong.
Absolutely.
As pro-life people, we should not be doing that. I understand you can get enraged, think things, you don't do it, but the FBI has to deal with a lot of people like that in the pro-life movement that call or make threats, and they get calls. So I think they have some of them have a personal disdain that people like you with the True Truck make their job harder because people are calling in bomb threats or trying to kill people, and the feds have to get brought in, I remember Angel Dillard a few years ago threatened to put a bomb underneath Bernhardt's car, right? Wasn't that it? So it's like the FBI has to get involved in all this stuff, and so they get annoyed because we have to win our war through education on pro-life and important issues, not through actions that are illegal. But I think that was an issue. I had turned in some stuff to the FBI a few years ago about somebody had brought to me information about a cover-up of murder in Butler County, and I believe it is legitimate, and there's still investigations, but it would create a whole lot of problems, and I was encouraging this person who brought me this information. I do believe it's legitimate, still to this day, and there's been a pretty big cover-up over this murder because it was a police officer that killed his wife, but they labeled it a suicide, but there's no way the way it happened it was a suicide. But there's issues like this, so I think they got mad that I was doing that. And then I was friends with some guys that were having some illegal poker games, and they thought I was involved in illegal poker games, and I don't even know how to play poker, and they couldn't find anything there. So then I think it just snowballed, and they decided, well, we don't like him. And then plus, like I said, Richard Chodorf, and this is very easily verifiable. He was the U.S. attorney. He was an assistant U.S. attorney, but he ran the Wichita office. Super verifiable. You just have to Google it. It's right there on his resume. And that Mona First and Aaron Smith were both hired during his time. Then Judge Melgren, that I mentioned earlier, he replaced Richard Chodorf with somebody else because I think Judge Melgren knew the political leanings, even though Gene and Richard Chodorf were technically registered as Republican, that probably, I tell people, if you are a registered Republican, you have to have at least advocate for one position that's in the National Republican platform. Just one. Gene Chodorf, and I exposed it during my campaign against her, she didn't adhere to one. She was anti-gun, she was pro-choice, pro-higher taxes. The list went on and on, just one. I'll respect you if you can tell me one reason why you're a Republican, and then let's move on. But somebody like her, that wasn't the case. Richard Chodorf is removed, and I think there was some hostility in the office. Anyway, it was just a perfect storm, and you can't dwell on the reasons why, because that'll make you crazy. So I just chalk it up to political retaliation and try to move on.
All right, well, let's give him a hand here, and now we'll take questions.
Yeah, let's take some questions.
Art,
Yes.
go ahead.
One question. I'm not sure you'll know the answer to this one.
Yeah, you always give me difficult questions, Art. Art gives me questions like, how do we fix DCF? And it's like, that is a big question.
Yeah, I'm working on that one.
Yes.
After a grand jury, well, in your case, the federal jury that was convened, after the trial is over, completely done over,
Yes.
can any of the jurors speak out?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question for the video. Okay. In case you couldn't hear Art's question is that after the grand jury, is that correct so far? After the grand jury, can the
After
jurors
the federal jury.
can the jurors speak out?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, and jurors absolutely can. It's absolutely their right, and you see jurors that were on the O.J. Simpson trial. They'll write their own books and give their own take on it. So yes, absolutely.
To follow that up, though, can a judge order a gag order on them even after the fact?
I do not know if a judge can order a gag order on a jury. I do not believe so, because it's their right. Now, a grand jury is different because those are in secret.
Right.
They can't speak about it. But after a jury has actually assembled and reached a verdict and it's been delivered, they are free citizens to talk about their experiences.
Next question.
Well, it's a question of what can we do, about the corruption. Sedgwick County itself is extremely corrupt, and without going into all my case, I too suffered from the severe political repositions from two district attorneys that hated me because I picketed their house and I was with a group.
Greg, make this a question. Make it a question.
But there's just so much work to do until we get in and start taking down some of these people in office, in the law enforcement, and nothing's going to happen. And the biggest thing I learned to all my deal is no money, no justice. If you're poor and you don't have money for a lawyer, you forget it. They do whatever they want to do. If they don't like you, here. And that's my whole family's deal. My brother is going through a deal with his son that's in jail over word. Talk about the criminal threat statutes. This has got to be completely, we're not basing the criminal threat statutes off the Patriot Act.
Yes.
Which gives the government, like I said, the government makes up whatever they want to.
Yeah.
That has to end until we get, I don't know how, that has to end.
Well,
or they do what they want.
And in order to fix the courts on the Sedgwick County level, because they work off a state statute on the schedule of crimes and the different punishments that come with it, until we get that fixed, we're going to continue to have issues locally. What you were talking about was personal retaliation.
Well, he put me in the paper and completely destroyed my company. Was the final straw with Mark Bennett putting me in the paper because I wore a Kevin O'Connor T-shirt.
So
walked in a parade. So
I remember
and
that.
Did the Eagle put the second side of the story? No, the Eagle is a newspaper that I wipe my butt with, and I've lived there all my life and read it all my life. But I told the editor, that's what I want to do in your paper.
Yes.
Because I've read it since I could read. Yeah. And you do not tell both sides of the story. You're very biased.
Well, I can vouch. I work in the courthouse every day. Our system is not perfect in Sedgwick County, but we as citizens, unlike our Supreme Court, as we've learned, we actually get a vote for our judges. We get a vote for our district attorney. And if we don't like it, we need to assemble that and get those people out. But we're very... It's not perfect, but it's better than the alternative,
People
which
don't
is
believe it
bureaucracy.
until they're involved in it.
I,
And
I'm
then
not
they get
arguing.
their eyes
I'm
on
not arguing with you. It's better than the alternative, which, as we've seen with the Supreme Court, when you have unelected people in closed doors choose who our judges are going to be without a vote, because even the governor can appoint one of 3 individuals that a nominating commission gives the governor. And if the governor doesn't like one of those 3 people they give them, that group gets to choose who the Supreme Court justice is. Even the governor does not have a choice of who's on our Supreme Court. And that's where I'm saying that us in Sedgwick County get to vote and elect our own judges and our own district attorney. And it's not perfect, but it's the best way to hold anybody accountable. And outside of a theocracy, there is no government that's better than a republic with democratic elections.
There you go. Dr. Paul Finney, you're next.
According to Mark's press release, when you were on the city council, you unearthed the scandal about Don Linder. Can you talk about
About
that?
what?
The Don Linder Corporation.
Oh,
Don-
that's the same. That was the contractor that worked on Mark's house that was getting paid for work that was never done.
That's right.
And in his neighborhood, and then damage to his home, which
Never's been paid
was
for
never
yet.
compensated. So, and you had to actually move out of the house, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, that
It
gets to be
destroyed
a
the foundation.
two-part story. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Busted
so
4
that
places.
was the issue, and I got Mark some of the information, and I said, you need to take this to the FBI, because the problem a lot of times is there are certain people that will cover up or not expose something because they're friends with somebody. And I think that's what happened in Mark's case, is that somebody was protecting somebody. Now it's been so long, many of these people are actually dead.
Or resign from office or whatever.
But Chris Churches and Chris Carrier
Chris is
and,
dead,
and
yeah.
some of those people that were involved, they're not even alive anymore. So it's impossible to prove things. Now we'll never know.
We got the video footage of it, and here we are in the flooding season. We've got a bridge that is not up to standard. You know, that bridge is, maybe it's safe. Maybe some engineer could look at it and say, yeah, it's safe, but maybe not. You know, the FBI definitely. We're not done with the FBI on this.
But I'm still not clear.
What are you not clear on? I mean, the FBI sided with the city council. The city council refused to pay me the damages on the house until I would agree to get rid of the truck trucks. That was just like completely out of the left field. That has nothing to do with my work or anything else. They came and damaged my house. $96,000 in damage to it. The city of Wichita, Don Linger Construction Company. And-
Well connected.
Yes.
Did they have a building permit?
Yeah, they did.
Oh,
They
yeah,
were
it was a
using
construction
They were
permit.
using a pile driver that's supposed to be used on highways. It's more than 700 feet away from any building or structure. I was 109 feet away. They destroyed my house. And not only mine, but my neighbor on the south and 2 neighbors to the north. They had less damage than me. They didn't have 96, but they were in the 50s. So, I mean, it did a lot of damage in the neighborhood. But they were Vietnamese. The one on the south was Cambodian. And they couldn't argue. They didn't really want to get involved. They didn't want to go against the city. And it was a bad situation. And the FBI thought it was a good idea, the Jim Skelton plan, who's not necessarily Michael's best friend. Jim Skelton thought, we owe Mark Eatson this $96,000, but we're not going to pay him until he gets rid of the truth truck. And that's where it stood. And the FBI, of all things, agreed with that. So they let Don Linger get away with murder, and I still haven't been paid. And now I have 2 truth trucks. So, you know, maybe they, by their way of thinking, I owe them 96 because I got 2 now. I don't know. But it's crazy. That has nothing to do with my pro-life work. This was strictly damage. Bob Knight is on videotape and on an affidavit saying, they were going to pay for it and everything else. And they didn't. We're still
Well,
there.
I think one of the problems, and like I said, the vast majority of these individuals at the FBI or the police department or wherever are good people,
Sure.
solid
Yeah, I
people
think that was nice.
that do the right thing. There are bad people in every profession. And I think in Mark's case, just because something sounds crazy doesn't mean it is crazy. And I think that's the problem. People discount things sometimes because they think, okay, this couldn't happen to you. And I think I've been guilty of that at times, with people telling me stuff about how they were singled out or prosecuted, and you think there's more to the story. I had family members and close friends after the trial come and say, well, Michael, we thought there was more. We thought there just had to be more. I had Michael Schwenke from KWCH. He interviewed me a couple of days after. I don't know if any of you watched it. But he said to me, he goes, Michael, I thought there had to be a smoking gun. He goes, I apologize. I've had random people in the store. I've had a guy take a picture with me that wanted to show his class at East High School because he wants to use my case as criminal justice reform, the illustration for what we need to do. And I had one lady, and she stopped my cart. I was at Costco, and I was on the phone with my buddy Garrett Love, and this lady says, you, and she grabs my cart, and she goes, are you Michael O'Donnell? I said, yeah, and she goes, I need to apologize. And I said, for what? She goes, I thought you were guilty as Hell. She goes, my husband and I, we both talked about it. We thought you should do it. She goes, I'm so glad you fought it. I feel so bad for you. And Garrett heard that. He goes, what was that? And I said, oh, this lady just thought I was, as guilty as could be, and that she apologized. And that's just a couple of the anecdotes. For a while there, every day people were stopping me. Literally every day. Because it was the biggest news story in Wichita for months.
Exactly.
They talked about it every time. My attorney tracked it on Google, and he said if you would have paid the airtime for every commercial or every radio spot or newspaper ad, he said they estimated that local media spent over $1 million in airtime talking about this case of $10,000. I mean, it's insane. But you all know it. I mean, if any of you watch TV even a little bit, you caught a glimpse of it, and it was every radio station, every television station, the newspaper. It was a constant hit for over a year, over 10 grand. And that's why even Michael Schwenke apologized. He goes, I'm sorry, I thought there just had to be more. And I said, that's okay. I've had personal friends. I've had family members tell me that. So it's just wild. And it's, the old mountain out of a molehill deal. Like, they just turned into this colossal deal. Like I was, selling uranium to Russia, because evidently that's not a big deal.
Okay.
Yes, that's illegal.
Any other questions over here? Okay, go ahead, Glenn.
Do you have a specific suggestion for court reform?
Yes, I actually do. Thank you, Glenn. That's a great question. We need the Kansas legislature, and other states have done this, so it should be fairly easy. They need to enact our own First Step program that Washington, D.C. passed last year, is that Kansas needs to mirror that to lower some of these offenses. Let's stop filling up our prisons with non-violent drug offenders and get them help instead. And it's just too easy to put people in prison, and you take away their family and that stability that a family can bring. You take away their ability to pay taxes and be a contributing member of society. And then you take tax dollars away that could be spent on treating some of these problems that we have, or the never-ending lawsuits over education. But we are filling up our prisons with people that need either mental help or drug treatment, and these aren't violent people. We have got to change it. And we as Republicans should be leading the charge, because it is, you've seen certain people talk about the fact that it's almost modern day slavery, that the African Americans are 9 or 10 times more likely than white Americans to end up in jail for similar crimes, because, like Greg said, it comes down to they didn't have the money to defend themselves, and they get a public defender these public defenders are dealing with 1,000 cases at a time. And they just go to the judge and say, hey, we're just going to plead this out, give them 6 months, give them a year, give them 2 years. And they're not treating the problem. And then they go back. They get out, then they get back in the same cycle. We've got to start treating it. As Republicans, people that care about life, we should say we don't want these people in prison. We want them with their families. We have children that don't have dads in the home because they were caught doing something stupid like selling an ounce of marijuana. And it's stupid that we're destroying families and taking away tax dollars that need to be spent other places. And we as Republicans have a history of doing that, and we need to do it again. And the Democrats will come on board just like they did in D.C. Barack Obama could have done the First Step Act any time in his 8 years. And Trump, and I believe it's one of the things why he will get reelected, is because he has done more with some of the pardons that he's done to African Americans that were treated so poorly. That Alice Johnson story, I'm sure everybody's seen her or read her story. The first-time offender grandmother gets put in prison for the rest of her life, and he gave her a second chance. That's what this legislation needs to be, and we need the legislature to get on board, and there are many members that'll do it, but they just need to take the initiative. This year was all about school finance and the lawsuits, but next year really needs to be about changing the narratives and practicing what we preach about, being pro-life people, because locking somebody up and taking them away from their families is not a pro-life position. And it's not even a good economic position. You know, it's going to cost us, $50,000 to $60,000 a year to incarcerate them, and then they're not paying taxes. And by the way,
Or child support.
or child support, right? And then government has to step in and take care of that. It's just insane that conservatives and Republicans haven't worked harder on that. But we are just very fortunate that we have the president that cares. Ron Estes has spoke about this at a couple of events that I've been at, and let's figure out a way to treat these people that have drug problems and not lock them up.
Well, how do we get
That was a great
people-
answer. Oh, okay, hold on, Alan, he hasn't had one yet, and then we have time for about 2 more questions, so Alan and
And then
one
I'm going to go
more.
meet my niece.
It's 8 o'clock, so.
Yeah,
So
but that's
go ahead,
okay.
Alan.
Okay, if you really feel that strongly about first step reform, aren't you in a better position to do that in the Senate as opposed to in the county commission?
Well, I would argue that wasn't at the time when I ran for county commission as big of an issue, because obviously I was elected at the same time President Trump was, and I hadn't gone through my own struggle. So it changes, personal experiences change your outlook. But I believe I have a strong voice. I can go and push for that now from personal experience. It's up my name ID considerably, and I think even people who don't like me will listen to me when it comes at least to criminal justice reform. And you can make a lot of change at the local level, and we're doing that. Sedgwick County Commissioners, we are also the Board of Health. We are working on some mental health crisis treatments that we need, because once again, it is draining our resources. The sheriff came, and we have to get more sheriff's deputies in the jail, sheriff's deputies on the street. It's a big drain, and we need to focus that. And frankly, we've seen Washington D.C. can't do anything much anymore, so it makes the state and local government even that more important on making positive change.
I know we didn't really gain much when you left and we picked up Lynn Rogers.
Well, I know, and now he's lieutenant governor. I have kicked myself over that one. Man, yeah, don't make me feel bad, because I do feel bad.
No,
but
that's not your
Lynn
fault.
was another one of those people. He was a Republican until he ran against me, right? I mean, he had been a lifelong Republican, and he had told people he was pro-life years ago, and now he's lockstep.
Yeah, I think he's grown in office.
Yeah, and it's that one does sting a little bit that Lynn Rogers did that. But 2020 elections are coming up. We've made great strides in the legislature, but made a big step back in the governor's office. But we have an opportunity in 2020 to re-elect. We have truly our delegation in Sedgwick County. We got great people, and we can strengthen that a little bit more. Well, and Sumner County, I would say. What Glenn did and his supporters by getting rid of Ed Trimmer was probably the biggest advantage. Oh yeah, we should have thought that.
And Anita.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah. It was a 2-1 deal. And 2 years prior to that, getting Senator Alley, you went from a somewhat weak delegation to an extremely strong one. So there's little movements ahead like that. But nobody thought Ed Trimmer was going to lose. I know you were talking about Tim Norton with me, but Ed Trimmer was similar, because good people had ran against him and not even come close. And then a couple times they did, but he won by like 6 votes against Larry Alley one time, I remember. So we've got to continue to move forward and hopefully take that seat back.
Who hasn't had a chance to ask a question? Myron, it's yours.
This is way back to county government. When the general was county manager, he did a rather massive reorganization
Yes.
to make county government more efficient, and I understand that stepped on a few toes. is his system being maintained, or is it starting to work back to the way it was, where things are not done in accordance with what people want? They're
Yeah.
a little more crazy.
I can't think of any area that we have made things not efficient. There were a lot of personality issues, is a good way to put it. And frankly, we're in the process now, very exciting, I'm sure a lot of you have read about it, but consolidating Sedgwick County Fire and Wichita Fire. We've actually hired somebody to do that, but you can't get that done unless you have people that work well together. And unfortunately, the city manager and the county manager at the time couldn't even really be in the same room. And you have, even if you don't agree with people, you have to collaborate and work with them. But the best thing that we could do in Sedgwick County, for those of us that live here, is consolidate government. There's way too much duplication. There's way too much cost. It doesn't serve anybody well. And frankly, when your house is on fire, you don't care if it's a Wichita fire truck or a Sedgwick County fire truck or a City of Derby fire truck. You just want it there. Same with police. When you call 911, you don't care if it's a city employee or a county employee. We have got to do that. And at the local government is where you can actually implement that. And we're in the process of doing that. So a lot of times it comes down to personality. That if people are at constant conflict, you can't get anything done. And but I think we're moving forward in that direction, keeping our mill levy flat, not raising that. We're getting a new appraiser that hopefully will be more restrained. Johnson County and Sedgwick County have had a lot of problems with property taxes going up, and not a good way to combat that or even protest it. So part of my plan with the new appraiser is actually to get ombudsmans and people that can work with individuals to fight their property tax increases, and there needs to be more responsibility there. But I feel like a lot of the ways that county government has been more efficient over the last few years, the property tax lid and others, is in place, and it will continue to be as far as I'm there.
Let's give Michael a warm round of applause. Michael, you are excused if you
All right.
need to be.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to be rude, but I am going to go meet my niece. So,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm not speaking because of age, but you do deserve a standing ovation. Even
Oh,
though-
no,
I think
that's
so. All right. Well, Michael, thank you so much, and we'll be talking more about this. Your new interest in prison reform.
Mike came over to hear you.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah, and good luck.
okay. Well, best regards to your
Thank you.
family, to your mom and dad.
I'll
okay?
tell them.
You bet. Okay, that brings us down to agenda item J. Still have wide open positions if anybody's interested in going to the NFRA convention coming up in Atlanta in October. We need to think about strongly if you want to do that.
What date?
The dates are October 10th through the 13th. You very likely could meet Donald Trump. That's just where I met him. My Facebook picture with Donald Trump was taken there in Nashville when he was there for the 2015 Presidential Preference Convention. So if you want to be a delegate, talk to me about that. If not, I'll go again as the only one, but I'd like to have more than one delegate from Kansas. Item K, we obviously we're always looking for more help and more people to join. If you have friends, I had a couple of people last time turn in some email addresses of people that they thought might be interested, and so that helps too. And I will follow up on those. And so anybody that we can get added to the group, we definitely need it. Pachyderm meets every Friday, most every Friday, not every, but most every Friday. Tomorrow they do not meet because of Memorial Day weekend, so don't go to the Pachyderm tomorrow. You're wasting your time. They're not there. As I mentioned earlier, KCFL is now operating at 2 abortion clinics in Wichita, both the Planned Parenthood and at the Trust Women, which is the old Tiller facility. And my gosh, we need more help. It's hard to keep those, at Trust Women, we have a large pool to draw from, people that have been there before, and now with at Planned Parenthood, there's literally 5 different driveways that they can come into the place. At Trust Women, we have one, so we set up one table and get 2 people there and you're done. There's 5 different ways they can get into Planned Parenthood, and it's a much more difficult place. We're just gonna have to do things differently, but I need people. You know, I need at least 5 at a time, and if everybody stays only an hour, I mean, I need lots of people. So let me know if you're interested in that. And it's great if you end up saving a life. If you're out there for enough hours, you're going to end up saving a life. And then, like Michael said, it's wonderful to see them after they're born. And you know, we have children now that are 15 years old that were back in 2004, the first year, our first saves. They're up into 15. And I'll tell you the other side of this that not everybody understands. What do I do with my time all day? Well, we guarantee the moms that we are their last resort source of financial help. We have 2 moms that just recently went over $20,000 in direct cash donations from us. And there's lots of them, you know, that just ladders on down. Now, the most common amount we give is none. We have 526 Lifesaver moms and 526 babies that we know about. We think the number could be even 2 or 3 times that, but these are the ones that we know about, we got pictures of, you know, have a confirmation that the baby was saved. So anyway, need help all the way around. Our next KRA meeting is on July 25th, because the June meeting, we are going to take off. I am going to be in North Dakota for a family reunion, and so I won't be here unless Debbie wants to run the meeting, or if somebody wants to try to do it. I think that we're good for a month off. So we're not planning on having a meeting in June. Our July meeting, we already have the speaker set up. It's the Lacey Cruz, who is a co-worker of Michael O'Donnell on the county commission. She's a new one. Probably a lot of people here couldn't even identify her. So we need to know about her. What do you say, Alan? Yes, of course, yes. But she's a nice person, and she's willing to come and talk to us. And so we just want to learn who she is, and you know, find out how badly we should try to get somebody to run against her. And this is on tape. That's what we do. We try to get people to run against. But I will work on the ones that are worse first, and I don't think she's going to be on the top of the list. I think she's a pretty good gal. You know, I say that not knowing everything I want to know about her. But if she's willing to come and talk, I'm willing to listen. And good grief, she's not the first Democrat. We've had as many Democrats here as we've had Republicans over the years, especially when you get into judicial positions and everything else. You know, and that's the way I like it. Leave it open, listen to all points of view, and hear what they have to say. So, and by the way, you know, it's often the Republicans that I agree with the most stringently, or disagree with the most stringently. So they're not all Michael O'Donnells. All right, with that said, we're ready for adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion to adjourn from Art. Do we have a second? Debbie is seconding it. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Enjoy your meal.